yes, there's a lot of people in the West, from NGOs like the UN, and you get environmental protesters. They'll throw paint around and everything, telling us that climate change is this big threat and that fossil fuels is causing this. You're a fossil fuels for Africa advocate. Is this something you're concerned about?
Not really. I know very many people in my community who are not concerned about climate change. I know many people in Africa who don't even know what climate change is. Like, we don't care. We have far bigger problems. We have 1 in 3 people sleeping hungry. We have 1 in 5. Actually, like, we have 1 in 5 people who are very poor, extremely poor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have people who are sleeping hungry. So these people don't really care about climate change, or, at the end of the day, they want to have something on the table, something for their family, food for their family, and some money for to pay school fees and, upkeep. That is it. They don't care about climate change. At the same time, the data says something different. The data shows us a different picture, despite what mainstream media is saying. Mainstream media is saying, hurricanes are increasing in frequency and intensity, but that's not what data says. That's not what the data says for wildfires, not for
Mm.
flooding or desertification. It's it's a big scam. Like, these people are out there trying to earn a livelihood out of
Yeah.
scamming people. Yeah.
I think what they do is they've already made their mind up in their head of what they want. They want the evidence to prove so and so, and if you've already got a conclusion in mind, then it's guaranteed that the result is going to be climate change. You know, if you want it to say climate change, you're going to make it say climate change. So it's
Yeah. At the same time, I think there is this I'd say malthusian. Like, we have people who have been brainwashed by the
yep.
government and these NGOs. So they just hate people and they hate humanity. Like, today, I was watching this documentary. Okay, not a documentary. It was something, wild animals chasing, like a lion chasing a gazelle, and I saw people saying, "Oh, we have wild animals. We should embrace whatever they're doing over there." Like, it's crazy that we have. So they're saying that human beings are very bad people.
Yep.
We are terrible. We don't have compassion and stuff like that. So
Yep.
I think mostly in European nations we have this anti-humanist uh, perspective. Like, people just hate other people. They don't hate themselves, but they hate other people. And it's sad that because I'm in Africa, we get to be looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
I see people saying online, Africans are breeding like rabbits. These terrible Africans, they're warming up the planet. You
Yeah.
know,
Overpopulation. Oh, there's too many people on the planet. And,
yes,
yeah.
yes, they grow. It's starting from European countries.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's why
Mm.
they push this climate agenda to try and convince us there's too many people on the planet? They might want less of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's one of the major reasons. So we have people who don't want others, the poor, to have access to energy, to have access to technology, things that they have, things that made them prosper. So the fact that they are trying to prevent Africa from having access to energy and that technology just says that these people don't want Africa to flourish. They just want a few of Africans, a few of us, just enough of them.
Why is fossil fuels necessary for Africa developing?
Uh, that's a really good question. So, first, most of the people in Africa, I think about 60-70% of people in Africa earn a livelihood from agriculture. And one of the easiest ways for us to improve agriculture is by using fossil fuels. We're going to use fossil fuels directly and indirectly. Directly, like running a tractor for energy. Yeah, you burn diesel, run a tractor. So directly, and indirectly because we need steel to manufacture those farm power machines and other machinery. So, okay, number one, we need fossil fuels to power farm machines, be it irrigation pumps, be it the various, be it tractors, be it combine harvesters, be it these tiny farm machines. So we need fossil fuels. You can't use electricity. You can't power a tractor using electricity. You have to use diesel because of the energy density, you know. And then number two, we need fertilizer. Fertilizers improve the world in a bigger
Yes. Yeah.
way. So okay, in Africa right now, in my community, we have people using cow dung. You know, we dig our farms and then we use cow dung to feed the crop with the nitrogen that we require to flourish. But you realize that manure, be it well decomposed manure, has got a very tiny percentage of nitrogen, about less than 4% actually, compared to urea. Urea is a fossil fuel fertilizer, which has got 46% nitrogen content. So that's what we need. We need urea. We don't need manure. Like if for instance, if I wanted to, if I was doing like 1 hectare of land, I need like 10 to 30 tons of well decomposed manure compared to just 100 kilos of 100 kilos of urea. So we need fertilizer, nitrogenous fertilizer from fossil fuels. And then irrigation, because most of the areas in Africa are, I'd say, dry because we are along the equator. So we need to irrigate our lands, and irrigating our lands is us needing plastics and the PVC pipes for the drip lines, and polythene for the greenhouses, all of that. And if we want to do desalination, water desalination, we can do ocean water desalination, as well as drilling of boreholes. All of that requires fossil fuels, not electricity. Reliable, versatile energy from fossil fuels. So fossil fuels for Africa, yeah?
Fossil fuels for Africa.
Yeah.
Nitrogen, when you mentioned nitrogen fertilizer, I think that's what they're going after in the Netherlands. And they're saying the nitrogen fertilizer is something to do with, climate change again. And that seems to be the justification for trying to seize the farmland and steal it. So it does seem much more like a power thing. It happens to be that, oh, this is actually destroying the planet, and therefore we need to own the farmland, which never seems to go well. We can look at Russia, the Soviets, and how they starved Ukrainians. I don't know how long ago, but
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Yeah, and actually, like the best example, I think, is Sri Lanka. They did that, I think, in 2020, and they noticed a very big change in production. I think like tea went down, tea production went down by 40%, rubber, I think, by like 20 or something. So that's one of the best examples. If they want to see like a real example of a country not using nitrogenous fertilizer and using, organic, sustainable, they can just look at Sri Lanka.
Yeah. And Sri Lanka, I think, in the last year or two, their economy's not been doing good at all. And we're reading a lot about it. So yeah. And with the Industrial Revolution, it's most countries didn't really progress. It was very slow progression in development. And then around the 1700s in the West, the Industrial Revolution happened, and that's when everything spiked up. So I suppose, would you say Africa are waiting for their Industrial Revolution? That's when development goes way up and quality of life would increase and improve?
Yeah. That's coming. That's coming. That's happening.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what about things like solar or wind energy? That's what people are trying to switch over to now in the West.
Oh yeah. So it's crazy. Okay, so I think one of the best examples to look, because like if somebody's going to make a point and say we need solar and wind, we can always look at, do we have a country that's doing that so that like we can copy it?
Yeah.
And one of the best countries to use as an example is Germany. Germany is like a world leader in renewable energy, solar and wind. And the funny part is, okay, the first thing, most of the solar panels are being manufactured in China. I think about 90% of solar panels in the world today are manufactured in China. China, which is running in dirty coal, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay, so they manufacture the solar panels. They use coal, which is like a fossil fuel, and then they send the solar panels. They sell the solar panels to Germany, and in Germany, solar works around 12% of the time. Only
Yeah.
12%. I think like wind turbines, they run, I think about 30 to 45% of the time, compared to, let's say, nuclear. Nuclear runs 95% of the time.
Yeah.
So, and we have, like in Kenya, where I come from, in Kenya, we have lots of geo and hydro. So hydro runs about 75% of the time, which is a good thing. So when they talk about solar and wind is just electricity. That's number one. That's just electricity. We need more than electricity. Electricity is about 18% of the total world use, energy use. So 18% only.
Yeah.
So the rest is going to the energy, like we need energy for heating, transportation, aviation, etc., etc., not just electricity. And electricity is limited at the moment. You can't, as I said earlier, you can't drive a tractor, you can't power a tractor using electricity. You have to use fossil fuels.
Are there any laws holding you back with development? Any laws, maybe?
Sorry?
Are there any laws that are potentially holding you back with fossil fuels, like restrictions?
Oh, yeah. So last year we had the World Bank and the IMF. So
Yeah.
the two financial
Yeah.
organizations. So they told our government, like, if we are going to give you a loan, if you if you end fuel and fertilizer subsidies, and the government, like our government, was pushed to the wall. So for the past, I think like 3 years, the IMF and World Bank have been doing that to our government, and the government was saying no, but that was the former government. So the current government bought into, the push, and they ended fertilizer and fuel subsidies, and you can see a big change in whatever. A good example is taxes the government is collecting from selling fuel and fertilizer,
Yes.
and like it has plummeted because now people have gone back to using cow dung, which is terrible. People have stopped traveling using their cars. Like if you had a car, you're going to use public transportation. And even actually, most people have stopped using public transportation. They just trekking. So when you restrict, so Kenya a good, okay, so Kenya is an economy that depends so much on agriculture. Ending fertilizer subsidies is killing uh, farm production. Like it has gone down, and now
Yeah.
people can't even feed themselves. That's not good for anybody. So yeah, I don't like whatever the World Bank and IMF are doing in Africa, and Kenya is just an example. We have many other countries that are facing the same e- environmental policies from the UN, World Bank, and IMF.
Yeah, the World Bank and IMF. I used to be doing some research on it, and what I found wasn't good. In some African countries, there was Nigeria, because they have a sort of corrupt government. They can offer them a loan, and the politicians will just think it's like free money to test out certain systems,
Yeah,
like digital ID that's been tested, and just some sort of testing ground for their evil plans for the West as well. Nobody's benefiting really. But yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's your actual sort of your mission, your actual campaign? What are you doing to promote fossil fuels in your country?
Okay, so what I'm doing at the moment, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have people use clean energy instead of them using firewood, which is really dirty. And actually the dirtiest is, so when we harvest maize, because like every other person is growing maize, when we harvest maize, we have the maize cobs. So we usually use that. We dry the maize cobs and then we burn that as a fuel. And that's very dirty. Like if I was burning that in this house, you wouldn't even see me, because like it's so smoky.
Hmm.
I find people cooking in the house, coughing and crying at the same time. So uh, what I'm trying to do is getting people LPG is liquid petroleum gas. I'm getting people that for cooking, which is far cleaner. It doesn't emit the smoke. At the same time, it burns efficiently. It's so clean. Like if you want to refill your can, you just go to a shop nearby and you refill it at a reasonable, affordable price. So that's what I'm trying to do. At the same time, I'm getting people connected to the grid. I'm doing lots of that currently. And okay, that particular project at the moment is funded in Bitcoin, which is a good thing,
Mm.
because now I don't have to go to the bank and explain myself, like where I'm getting the funds from, or
Yeah.
the government isn't monitoring my accounts, because with Bitcoin I'm anonymous. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing lots of other stuff. I'm uh, fighting against the UN and these environmental organizations. I'm very active on Twitter. So whenever they, let's say, World Food Program, WFP, and the UN, the UNDP, all of those, whenever they do posts relating to Africans, I'm always there trying to show them that whatever they're doing is anti-humanist, it's anti-African. So yeah,
Yeah, I hear you often say it's like racist or neocolonialism.
yeah,
Yeah.
neocolonialism.
Yeah. You know,
Mhm.
one of the other things I see very crazy is that the abandonment of fossil fuels is sustainable. Depends what they mean by sustainable. So, and what we see here in the West is, electric using lithium and cobalt and all these things, which is coming from countries like the Congo, and it's pretty much child labor to get these things. And I'm thinking, well, what do they mean by sustainable? Like sustainable means how this is something you're gonna sustain forever. So to me, like child labor doesn't seem sustainable, but fossil fuels does because there's, I'd say it's much healthier for people. Now, can I reaffirm? You go.
Yeah. I also don't understand what sustainable means,
Yeah.
but it's a word that European countries love to use, and I wouldn't say the US is Americans are using that as much as the
Mm.
Europeans. I think the education system in Europe is different from the US a little bit. So last year, in 2022, we had President Biden.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, so they were supposed to have okay, so I'm trying to recall that. So somewhere in Minnesota, I think in the southern part of Minnesota, they were supposed to start uh this campaign. So they had this campaign of electric vehicles, so they could mine cobalt over there, and I think tin, or nickel and tin, and maybe some cobalt. I'm not so sure about cobalt, but I'm sure about nickel and tin.
Mm.
So they were supposed to do some mining over there. But then what Biden did is he went to Zambia and Congo, because that's where we have child labor. So
Mm.
they were trying to make this deal of the two countries producing cobalt and tin and nickel for them. instead of them mining it in the US. So if they did it in the US, of course, in the US they have this superior technology, mining technology. They'd be using machines. But then I don't know what made the Biden regime to push that to Africa where we have child labor. So some of these things, man, I don't understand how these people think, but I think it boils down to hating Africans.
Yeah, they say it's for the planet, but what about the people, right? It's like, sustainable for the planet, but not so sustainable for humanity. It's,
Yeah,
it's just hypocrisy, isn't it? They don't really care.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is just centered around climate change or the environment and not human flourishing.
Yeah. So with fossil
Mm.
fuels, is it not just essential for Africa developing? Is it also completely fine for the environment?
Uh, okay, so with fossil fuels, we can master the climate with fossil fuels. Like we can do a lot of stuff. So a good example, if it was like hot, we can always use fossil fuels to have fans running, you know, and cooling the home instead of you just waiting for climate to change, become cold. Um, so other than that, okay, so the reason why I advocate for fossil fuels is we can build far climate resilient structures or houses because with fossil fuels we have cement, we have steel, and we can't build houses without the two. At the moment, most houses over here are uh, they have dung, the mud and dung. You mix soil and dung, and then you mold that for in a wall.
Yeah.
So that's what we have. That's what most family houses are on. Um, I hope. Okay, so once we have access to fossil fuels, we can always build better and climate resilient structures.
Yeah, when you're saying how they make the houses and all that stuff, perhaps those things are sustainable materials, but they're not good materials. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if you went online and so when you look at this, there are videos on YouTube which are trending like 50 million views, 100 million views in like a week. So those videos are usually living in a okay building a sustainable house. So you see somebody building
Oh
like a
yeah.
house using mud and stuff like that. So or a swimming pool using mud, and that's what Europeans think is how we should be living, because that way you
Yeah.
don't impact Mother Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is what to you would be success?
Success is when every other African is fed, when every other African isn't poor, and when every other African has access to clean energy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. With Bitcoin, so what would you say? Why have you decided to use Bitcoin? What are all the reasons?
So I didn't. I've been uh, reading on Bitcoin, researching on Bitcoin, but until I received funds in Bitcoin, and I did see like so last year I went to Cape Town. There was this adopting Bitcoin conference over there, and I saw first-hand use of Bitcoin. Like I saw people using Bitcoin. People will pay for stuff using Bitcoin and buy stuff using Bitcoin, and like it was instantaneous. Like just you
Right.
scan and that is it. It's that quick. And the good thing with Bitcoin is the government isn't
Yeah.
able to monitor your accounts. The government can't ban you. And I was so surprised. So when I went to South Africa, I had some Kenyan shillings with me. But then when I got at the airport, I couldn't even convert that to the South African rand. Imagine like I'm in Africa, but I can't use my Kenyan shillings in South Africa. At the same time, I can't even exchange that for the South African rand. So I was forced to make some calls and stuff like that, and that's how I solved it. But with Bitcoin, one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin in Kenya is one Bitcoin in South Africa. I can always use that whenever I
Yeah.
go to South Africa and people using Bitcoin over there. So I can send somebody some Bitcoin and they can send me some rand, which I can use. So I like the anonymity part of Bitcoin. And I also like the fact that one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin everywhere. Like one Bitcoin
Yeah.
over here is equal to one Bitcoin everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange because it sounds convenient, and then it also sounds very safe because no one can come and hack into it, no one can spy on you. But then they push things like central bank digital currencies here, and under the guise of being safe and convenient. But Bitcoin sounds just as safe and convenient, yet they label it as something for people with things to hide or criminals and all these things. Is it just an attack on our privacy from the government? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they could be right, but the thing is, I'm using Bitcoin to better my community. So we have people using Bitcoin in a good way. Not every other person out there using Bitcoin wants to kill somebody
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
They just don't want the government looking at all their purchases, and I mean, especially with what we've seen in Canada with the trucker protests. The second you go and protest something, they'll freeze your bank account with Bitcoin. I assume they can't do that. So
Yeah.
people think,
Mhm.
well, I've not got anything to hide, so I don't need Bitcoin. But you think you have nothing to hide until the government thinks you do have something to hide because you're obviously
Yeah.
illegal of some new crime they've invented out of nowhere, and it's yeah.
Yeah.
Also with in Kenya in the education system, is there people taught about climate change? Is that something you're taught about?
Yeah. That's something that, so recently I shared a post. My sister is a teacher. She's a high school teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
she sent me okay, so the next topic she was going to teach something to do with uh what was it? I can't remember, but then it had something like how dirty fossil fuels are. I shared it on Twitter. So it read something like how dirty fossil fuels are, or I can't remember very well. But even in primary school, that's
Mm-hmm.
where children are learning about climate change. They're being told climate change is this existential. I can't even pronounce that word, existential threat.
Yeah.
Like it's a big thing that's probably going to end humanity if we don't do something about it. So we have children being told plant trees, stop using plastics, stuff like that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
the,
I
the,
mean,
the education system brainwashing
yeah.
people to buying into the, green
Yeah.
greenwashing. Let me call
Yeah.
it that.
I find that
Hmm.
crazy because at least here, I'm in the UK. We're taught that fossil fuels are bad, climate change, the exact same stuff as you. But the thing is, we don't currently need fossil fuels in order to have food right now. You know, as in you're saying, what was the statistic of 1 in 5? What was that? Was it something
Yeah.
different?
So we have 1 in 5 who are sleeping hungry,
Yeah.
and 1 in 3 who are very poor, extremely poor.
Exactly. So then, and then your own government, I'm assuming it comes through the government, pushing in education things that you would argue is holding you back from progressing. So they're actually keeping
Yeah.
people down, the own government, not just foreign
Yeah.
governments, but your own. So just,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, we have. I think you've heard of President Ruto. Ruto is our president, so he's
right.
like the number one climate knight from Africa. Like he's
Mm,
is one of the leading climate activists as a president. He's speaking in these big environmental conferences or meetings, and like he is the leader. So most of whatever policies are made up there, they are actually being made in Nairobi, Kenya, because that's where we have the UNEP offices.
Mm-hmm.
As at the same time, we have this president who is all about money. Can I get
Mm.
climate reparations
Ah.
funds? Can I get some money if I tell Germany that we're going to have some solar panels installed and we're going to generate some green hydrogen for them? Can I have some funds if we say, oh, we want to embrace electric vehicles? That's something that's actually happening in Kenya. Can we have some funds if we say we're going to embrace electric scooters, the electric motorcycles? That's all happening in Kenya.
Yeah, but I mean, just the call said it's only got 2.5 minutes left. So I'm gonna try and be
Yeah.
quick. So you're saying, yeah? I'm assuming there's environmentalists in Kenya, not just in government, but there must be people that are agreeing with these policies or things put forward. And who are these kind of people? Are these people that don't maybe face the same issues as the specific area you live? Is that maybe the city
So
people who have enough money and can protest these things?
no, these are people. These are people who are looking for funds. These are people who are looking for employment from these environment organizations. These are people who want to become famous. These are
Right.
people who just hate other humans. These are people, most of them who have never been to a farm. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
here the Just Stop Oil protesters and all that, they always have people that have no struggle in life. They don't need to rely on any of these things, not a care in the world for any of these things. So, and
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm saying just stop toil. Just stop toil.
yeah,
Not just stop. Yeah.
yeah,
For Africa, it's different.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just say a final question, might be a little bit off topic. In Kenya, is it common to see men dressed as women?
No.
No? Okay, just
No, no,
wondering.
never.
Very common here.